Hey everybody, my name is Zach Pasquarello, and in this video, I'm going to talk about private money lending for real estate investors. I am going through somewhat of a crisis because for the last 2 years, I've been teaching people how to start a bookkeeping business on YouTube, and I teach exactly what I know. Everything that I've taught has been through my own personal experience. And that was fun while it lasted for the past 2 or 3 years because I was still relatively new starting my bookkeeping business. But here is the crisis. I started my bookkeeping business 5 years ago, and now I'm transitioning into private money lending or managing my investment fund, Zip Capital. So the problem is that I'm just not super passionate about teaching other people how to start a bookkeeping business. I've been wrestling with this for the past 3 or 4 months because my goal is to raise capital for my investment fund, not necessarily trying to grow the education portion of my business. It's been amazing and I love it. I love teaching people, but I'm just not super passionate right now about teaching people how to start a bookkeeping business because it's not super relevant to what I'm doing right now. I understand this is somewhat of a crisis because I have a pretty devoted following on YouTube, and I am so appreciative of all of the people who follow me on YouTube. And you probably follow me because you want to learn how to start a bookkeeping business. So I have potentially kind of a happy medium. What if instead of teaching you how to start a bookkeeping business, what if you all transition along with me? Instead of trying to start and grow your bookkeeping business, I kind of have an idea. Bear with me. Let me know what you think. I'm going to possibly try to teach you and talk about how I transitioned from bookkeeping to lending because lending is perfect for CFOs, CPAs, bookkeepers, accountants. So I think I might try to switch up my strategy here in what I talk about and maybe prioritize private money lending. And I know that's going to upset some people. I understand I'm probably not going to get as many views on my YouTube channel. I might lose some subscribers, but here's the reason why I'm making this change. It's because of me. It's where my passions are, where my interests are. They just don't align with teaching people sales and marketing and bookkeeping and QuickBooks for starting their own bookkeeping business. It's just not in alignment with what I want to do on a daily basis. So I think I have to switch for my own personal interests, my own personal benefit. My hope is that a lot of the people who've been following me, trying to learn how to start their own bookkeeping business, my hope is that you can transition with me. I want to teach you how to maybe do your own private money lending. That sounds kind of crazy. That sounds kind of weird, but if you start a successful bookkeeping business, or maybe you're already a CFO or a CPA, and if you want to learn how to do private money lending, I'm all for it. I can teach you what I know. Now, keep in mind, I'm a bookkeeping expert. I'm a QuickBooks expert. I'm not a private money lending expert. I don't pretend to be. I've only been doing it for 2.5 years. But that's what I want to be when I grow up. I kind of joke about it, but honestly, whenever I see myself in 5 to 10 years, that's really what I want to be. Private money lender. I want to be managing Zip Capital, my investment fund. Everything I learned over the past 5 years with my bookkeeping business has perfectly positioned me, in my opinion, to successfully launch a private money lending investment fund. It all happened by accident. Let me tell you how I learned about it, and hopefully you can learn the same way that I learned. I started doing bookkeeping for real estate investors about 3 years ago. And I realized these real estate investors were paying other people, random people, individuals, a ton of money on a monthly basis for interest payments. And I was like, that's weird. They're not a bank. They're not like a legitimate lending company. Who are these people who you're paying so much money to? And so I started asking questions to my bookkeeping clients. Who are these people? I learned they're just private money lenders. They're just regular people who are probably a little bit older and they have, I don't know, $1 million sitting in their 401k or $500,000 saved up in their savings account. And they're lending as a private money lender to local real estate investors. And here's the cool part, they're earning 12% interest, which is amazing. That's incredible. For the past 5 years, I've been searching for an investment strategy that is predictable, consistent, and earns double-digit returns. The stock market is amazing. Don't get me wrong, I have some of my 401k, some of my IRA investments in mutual funds that track the S&P 500. I love them. I like the stock market, but private money lending has been a great way that I can diversify my portfolio and still earn amazing returns. So I'm getting 12%, or these real estate private money lenders are getting 12% interest. And the other cool thing, everything's backed by real estate. There's a thing called a mortgage, which basically secures the promissory note, and it ties the promissory note to the property. That way, if they wanted to sell the property, they would have to pay you back first. Or if they default on their loan, then you can foreclose on the property because of the mortgage, and you can take ownership of the property, and then instead of them paying you back, you get the property. So I was learning about this private money lending indirectly by accident from my real estate investor clients when I was doing their bookkeeping, and my bookkeeping business really started to take off. I had my solo 401k maxed out, I had my IRA maxed out, and I basically was able to save up $50,000 over about 2.5 years growing my bookkeeping business. So if you're just now watching this, if you're just now thinking about starting a bookkeeping business, or maybe you did start 6 months ago and things are going really well, that's amazing. Hopefully, if you continue running your bookkeeping business and you grow to the point where you've got some extra cash laying around, maybe you might consider also getting into private money lending. Maybe you're going to find yourself where I was 2.5 years ago. So I thought about maybe I buy a rental property, but then I realized I don't know how to fix toilets. I don't know how to do electrical work, HVAC. I don't want to install cabinets, flooring, drywall, framing, appliances. I didn't want to deal with that. I don't have a construction background, but I do have a bookkeeping, accounting, finance background. So the idea of buying and owning rentals didn't seem necessarily too appealing to me, but the idea of potentially lending to the borrowers, that seemed a lot easier, or at least that seemed like it aligned a lot better with my skills and my interests. So instead of buying rental properties, I figured maybe I just take my $50,000 that I have saved up, and instead of actually buying a property, maybe I just lend it to somebody else buying a property, and then I'll get my money back in 6 months. And I'm able to still earn 12% interest, which is still a really great return when you think about it being fixed, consistent, reliable, and secured with a mortgage. So 2.5 years ago, that's what I did. I lent $50,000 to one of my real estate investor bookkeeping clients, and I got paid back in 30 days, $51,000. It was a super quick flip. They flipped it in 30 days and paid me $1,000 interest income. So I did the math, and I just made $1,000 in 1 month off of a $50,000 loan, which I get it. That's not a ton of money. You're not going to get rich as a private money lender, at least not in the beginning. You're not going to get rich lending $50,000. But if you look at your return, $1,000 over 1 month, that ends up being close to a 25% return, annual return on your $50,000. So if you can continue to do private money lending and take advantage of compounding interest, you can very quickly turn your $50,000 into a lot more money in the long run. So continue running your bookkeeping business, continue being a CFO or a CPA or an accountant or a lawyer, engineer, whatever your day job is, whatever your regular business is. Private money lending is a great passive income, almost like an investment strategy in addition to your normal business. So if you want to get started as a private money lender, just like I did, I'm going to spend probably the next 10 minutes just going through some advice, some strategy, some tips, some tricks. So this is a live video on my YouTube channel. If you're watching right now, if you have any questions specifically about private money lending or about my investment fund, Zip Capital, offering 8 to 12% fixed returns, go ahead and drop a question or a comment in the chat. I will say that this video is not necessarily designed for other people trying to learn how to start a bookkeeping business. So if you have bookkeeping questions, I'm probably not going to be able to get to them in this video, but if you have private money lending questions or real estate investing questions or Zip Capital questions, drop a comment in the chat. I will do my best to answer all the questions towards the end of this video. So I'm just going to start off by talking about my underwriting strategy. My underwriting strategy. That's the most important part. Risk mitigation is the most important part whenever you're lending money because we're operating as a bank. If you've ever got a loan from a bank or a mortgage, you probably went through a similar underwriting process. You probably had to give up tax returns and bank statements and answer a ton of questions. That's the exact same thing that I do. So anytime I do a loan, I always ask for the 2 most recent tax returns, 2 most recent bank statements, pay stub if the borrower is an employee, financial reports if the borrower is a business owner, and I want to see their investment experience. I want to know, have they successfully done a real estate investment before? Have they flipped and sold a real estate property before? Or is this their first time doing it? And when I get the tax returns, I'm a bookkeeper, I'm an accountant, I'm not necessarily a tax expert, so I am looking at their Schedule C, their Schedule E, I'm looking at their adjusted gross income, and I'm just trying to look for anything that looks like a red flag, anything that looks unusual. And honestly, most importantly, I'm looking to see, did they actually file their taxes? That's one of my biggest requirements as a private money lender. If you have not filed your taxes for 2023, probably not going to lend to you. So I look at your tax returns, I look at your bank statements, I'm looking for unusual transactions, maybe large wire withdrawals. Maybe I'm asking some questions like, hey, I see this $100,000 deposit from American Express. What was this? Maybe it was an American Express line of credit. So I just want to know any unusual transactions in the past 2 months. And then, of course, pay stubs. I'm much more likely to lend to somebody who has a $100,000 salary versus somebody who only has a $30,000 salary, not because they are necessarily going to be a better or worse real estate investor, but more so because they have better cash flow from their day job. So if things go bad, the person who has a $100,000 salary potentially might have more cash flow available to pay back their loan. So I look at their pay stubs, of course, financial reports. If they're an entrepreneur, I'm looking at their balance sheet, I'm looking at their P&L, and as I go through this process, I just can't help but think, wow, everything I've done over the past 5 years, I feel like has just perfectly enabled me, perfectly positioned me to be really good at this, really efficient, and just to know what I'm doing. So that's why I'm like super excited about private money lending, because I feel like us as bookkeepers and accountants, CPAs, CFOs, this is a perfect gateway, a perfect, I don't even know what you want to call it, but just a perfect transition or a perfect promotion or a perfect whatever, like going from being a bookkeeper, starting a bookkeeping business, getting that foundation into private money lending is just, it's just amazing. I'm so happy. I'm all in on private money lending. It's been going really well for the past 3 years. I hope it continues to go well. I think it will. I just feel like, dare I say, I feel like I hit the jackpot. I don't know. Stay tuned. Check back in 2 or 3 years. Maybe this is all going to come crashing and burning, and maybe it's all going to be terrible. Maybe I'm doing things terribly wrong, but it's been going really, really well for the past 3 years. So that's my underwriting process. I'm looking at all those documents, and then here's a big key. Not only am I looking at those documents, I'm also judging the borrower's organization and communication. In my opinion, this is huge. Let me give you a couple examples. There's a real estate investor in my local community who's really organized, really squared away, and he reached out to me for a loan. He sent me an email asking for a loan, and I said, yeah, sure. Send me these documents first, and I'll take a look at it. I kid you not, 3 hours later, I got a Google Drive, a shared Google Drive, with every single document that I requested, nice, neat, organized in that Google Drive, ready to go, ready for me to review. That is amazing. So me as the lender, me as the underwriter, I see that, and that's just amazing. It speaks volumes to the borrower's organization and communication. That is just a great way to get started. I can only assume that moving forward, this borrower is probably more likely to pay their monthly interest payments online, more likely to respond to my emails, more likely to be organized, easier to communicate with. That's just a really great sign. So it's those little not quantifiable things that I look for when I'm underwriting, like those little green flags and red flags. On the opposite side, if somebody sends me a loan request and I send them the document request, say, hey, that's great, I'd love to look into this, send me all these documents. And they might say something like, what? Why do you need all those documents? Why do you need all my tax returns? Like, I don't know how to get all that stuff. And if they can't get me that stuff, I'm not going to do the loan. Or if it takes them 2 weeks to get me that stuff, probably not going to do the loan. So it's just like I'm looking at the documents, but I'm also judging and evaluating the borrower's ability to communicate and stay organized. So I look at the borrower on an individual basis, and then I also look at the individual property because, like I said in the beginning of this video, my loans are secured by the property with a mortgage. So this property is my safety net. In the event of a default or a foreclosure, this property is what is going to pay me back. So that's really, really important. So I need to make sure I underwrite the individual and I also underwrite the property. I really look at two things. I look at the scope of work and I look at the ARV. The scope of work is basically the rehab budget because almost all of these properties, these fix and flips, almost all of these properties need some type of work, some type of rehab. And so the borrower needs to have a detailed outline for how they're going to fix the property. And I'm not just saying like chicken scratch on a napkin. I'm saying detailed. And I'm not even just saying like $10,000 repair the first floor, $50,000 repair the second floor and the roof, $5,000 fix the exterior. That's not detailed. I need line by line Excel spreadsheet, framing, windows, drywall, flooring, tile in the bathroom, appliances in the kitchen, water heater in the basement, HVAC, roof, really detailed. And I need a line by line, I need an explanation of how much everything's going to cost. And then I look at the property. I look at pictures. I look at the interior, exterior pictures, and there's really no exact science. I'm sure if you ask a construction worker or a home remodeling company, I'm sure there is like a much more exact science. But for me as an underwriter, I'm just kind of using my gut. I'm just kind of using my best judgment. So I'm looking at the pictures, looking at the square footage, looking at the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, and I'm looking at the rehab budget. First and foremost, do they have a rehab budget? If you don't have a rehab budget, I'm not going to lend to you because that means you're not organized. That means you're not taking this seriously. That probably means you don't know what you're doing. But if you do have a rehab budget, that's great, first of all. And then I'm also taking a look at the details. I'm actually reviewing the scope of work and the rehab budget. And then finally, this is the most important part, the after rehab value. This is what everything is based on. Whenever you go to sell that property, this is what I need to know. This is what you need to know, the realtor. This is what the lender needs to know. How much is that property going to sell for in 6 months when you try to sell it? And it's impossible to know for sure, but we can use our best guess by looking at comps, comparable properties that have sold in the past 6 months. And I'm looking at similar zip code, city, school district, neighborhood, city block, similar specs, square footage, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, amenities. Is there a pool? Is it a ranch? What kind of house is it? How big is the lot? All of these things affect the after rehab value. And all of these things determine what kind of comps I'm going to use when I'm calculating the after rehab value. Now, here's the key. If you just do a couple quick calculations, I want to look at the after rehab value and then subtract the purchase price and then subtract the rehab. So now we have what it's going to sell for minus purchase price minus the rehab. And then we need to factor in a few other costs. Closing costs to the realtor, finance cost for interest paid to the lender, holding cost, insurance, property taxes, utilities. You need to basically run the numbers. You need to evaluate this deal. Is this going to be a good deal? Is this going to be profitable for the borrower? Because if it's not profitable for the borrower, that decreases the likelihood that the borrower is going to be able to pay you back. So you want to make sure this is going to be a profitable deal for the borrower. That way, you're going to get your money back. So after rehab value, minus purchase price of the property, minus rehab, minus finance cost, minus holding cost, minus closing costs, what is that? Usually $25,000 is the bare minimum that I like to see as a profit for a flip. Now that can go up, that can go down, probably shouldn't go down, but usually $25,000 bare minimum. And so that's how I underwrite my deals. And that's it. That's how I underwrite my deals. So there's a couple questions in the chat, and then I might go over a few more things. Let's see, what is the minimum number we need to start? So the minimum amount that you need to start as a private money lender is probably, some people might say 25,000, other people might say 10 or 15,000. But here's the thing. If you only have, there's two different types of loans that you can do. There's a few more than that, but let's just keep it simple. There's two different types of loans you can do. You can do like the full purchase price, or you can just do a rehab loan. So the full purchase price, no problem. You're probably going to need more than $25,000, probably at least $50,000 or $75,000. Full purchase price, no problem. But if you just do a rehab loan, you could do that, but keep in mind, there's mortgages on these properties, which means there's liens on these properties. So if somebody else lends on the purchase of the property and you come in second and lend on the rehab, you could probably come in at a lower amount, maybe $10,000 or $15,000. But keep in mind, you have what's called a second position lien, or like a second mortgage on the house. So second is always worse than first. So if you don't have the first position, then you don't have as much security. If the borrower defaults, here's the thing. If the borrower defaults on your second position loan, you have to buy out the first position loan before you can foreclose on the property. Or if the first position loan forecloses on the property, they're going to get their money back first, and then you get whatever money is left over. So you're second. So if you have less than $25,000, you could potentially maybe do a rehab loan, but you're not going to be in first position. I only do first position loans, but that's because I have more than $50,000. So if you have less than $25,000, you might be able to do a rehab loan, but maybe not. So if you are doing a rehab loan, let's talk about this. Like, how do I make money as a private money lender? What do I charge? I mentioned 12% interest. And here is why I fell in love with private money lending. Not because of the interest. The interest is cool, 12%, and it's monthly interest only payments. That's cool. 12% interest is great. And then real quick, I will just plug, I run an investment fund, Zip Capital, and I offer 8% up to 12% fixed returns to accredited investors. There's a link in the description. Check it out if you want. So here's the whole idea. I'm going to try to teach you, and this might be a bad idea. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. My goal, I want to try to teach you how to do private money lending. So if you want to do this on your own, amazing. Go out, do it on your own. But if you don't want to do it on your own, you can just invest into my fund, still earn pretty great returns, but it's much more passive. And you don't have to actually do any of the lending yourself. You simply just invest into my fund. I pay you 8 to 12% fixed returns, and then I use your money for private money lending. Here's how I make money. So I charge 12% interest, and it's interest only. So if I give you $50,000 to purchase a property, for the duration of the loan, you're going to pay me $500 per month while you have this property. Interest only. And then whenever you sell the property, you're going to pay me back $50,000. So I will make $500 a month for the duration of the loan. But that's not really, that's cool, that's great, but that's not really how I make the majority, or that's not how I make more money. I charge points. I charge a processing fee and an underwriting fee, origination fee. This is how lenders really make money. I didn't know about this when I first got started. So once I learned about this, I thought, okay, That's what it's all about. That's how these guys are making money. So a $50,000 loan, 12% interest, that's cool, but I'm also charging a $3,000 origination fee. And then I'm also charging sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes a $1,500 underwriting fee. And then sometimes I'm charging a $900 processing fee. So I'm getting 12% interest plus origination plus underwriting plus processing, which is amazing. When you look at that from an annual return, it ends up being 18, sometimes 20%, sometimes 22% because of the origination fee, the underwriting fee, and the processing fee. That's where you can really turn that 12% annual return into 18, 20, 22% by stacking on those fees. And it's totally normal from what I've seen. A lot of first of all, banks do this. Even whenever you got your mortgage, your bank charged you an origination fee. You might not have known about it, but if you look at the closing disclosure from whenever you purchased your regular property, banks absolutely charge you points, an origination fee, processing fee, underwriting fee. I see a comment. So did you sell the bookkeeping business? No, Christian, I still have 87 bookkeeping clients. So if this is your first time watching, I still have my bookkeeping business. I still have 87 bookkeeping clients. I kind of talked about it in the beginning of this video, but I'm just not really super passionate about talking about my bookkeeping business anymore because I'm all in on my private money lending business. I'm all in on Zip Capital. So I'm experiencing kind of a crisis. I talked about it in the beginning of this video, but I'm experiencing a crisis. And part of me wants to stop making videos about bookkeeping just because I'm not super interested in it anymore. With the understanding that I'm going to lose some followers and some subscribers. But at the end of the day, I really started this channel because I enjoyed making these videos. And so as soon as I stop enjoying making the videos, then what am I even doing? Why am I still making the videos? I'm not getting rich by making these videos. YouTube pays me like $2,000 a month YouTube ad revenue, which is great, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not why I'm making the videos. I'm making them because I enjoy talking about this stuff. And so I think, I don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want to make anybody mad, but I think I might stop talking about my bookkeeping business. I might stop teaching people how to start a bookkeeping business. Instead, I think I'm going to transition into just talking about private money lending. Alec, you said, what do you see yourself working towards after private money lending? So here's my goal. I'm going to end the video here. Here's my grand goal. I'm going to raise $5 million in Zip Capital. Right now, I have 1.3 million lent out, and I have another 500,000 about to be lent out. So come July 1st, I'll have $1.8 million lent out. And 1.8 million lent out. My goal is to get 5 million. And so I'm paying investors 8 to 12%. And so I can make, and then I'm making about 18 to 20%. So I can make about 10% on the spread. So my goal is to raise $5 million. And then I can profit about $500,000 per year. And then on $5 million. And then if I have 5 million, I did the math, it's about 72 loans per year. So I can very comfortably process 72 loans per year, about 1 to 2 loans per week. I can very comfortably process 1 to 2 loans per week, profit $500,000 on my own. And then probably from there, I'm going to raise 10 million. Who knows? From there, I might increase it to 20 million, but I genuinely believe this is my end game. I plan on doing this for the next 30 years. I don't see myself being a bookkeeper for the rest of my life. I just don't. I plan on being the manager of Zip Capital. I plan on private money lending. Maybe I'll hire a couple people to underwrite loans and to be like a loan originator. And maybe I'll focus more on just raising capital. But this is really what I see myself doing for the foreseeable future. So I'm all in on raising capital, on private money lending. I plan on making more of these videos. Secret, if you made it this far, secret, I might plan on going live every day at 11 a.m. Let me know what you think. If you made it this far into the video, let me know what you think. If I should go live every day at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Or if that time doesn't work well for you, let me know if there's a better time. I'll go to one last question and then I got to hop off here. What if the deal goes bad? What if that 50K didn't go well? So it's secured. My loan is secured with a mortgage on the property. So if the borrower defaults on the property, then I get to take the property. And then I have to sell the property. So the idea is, so let's just do the math real quick. $50,000 loan. They paid $3,000 upfront, closing costs. Let's just say they paid $4,000 with a processing fee and an underwriting fee. So let's just say they paid $4,000, and then they also paid $500 a month interest for the last 6 months. So that's $3,000 plus $4,000. That's $7,000 they've already paid me on a $50,000 loan. So if I take back the property, and if I am able to sell the property for $50,000, then that's great. But even if I can't sell the property for $50,000, even if I sell it for $45,000 or $40,000, then I would still almost just about break even. So that's the idea. All my loans are secured with a mortgage. If the borrower defaults, I foreclose on the property. I get the property after I pay for legal and attorney fees, wait 6 to 12 months, get the property. Maybe I'll fix it up myself. Maybe I'll just sell it as is. And the goal is to at least break even. If not, maybe take a small loss. But I've never had to foreclose on a property. I've done 35 loans. I've done over $4 million worth of loans over the past 3 years. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. I've never had to default or foreclose on a loan ever. So I'm going to try to continue that streak for as long as possible. That's why underwriting, risk mitigation, is the most important part of my job. It's the most important part. It's the most important thing that I do. So let me know if you want me to keep making these every day at 11 a.m. My name is Zach Pasquarello. Thank you so much for your support. I love making these videos. I will see you all maybe next week. We'll see. Have a great day.